So the issue of illegal immigration is no longer dominating the news cycle like it did a couple months ago when the migrant caravan was lined up outside of El Paso, Texas. But that doesn't mean the issue is being resolved, and it certainly doesn't mean the cost to Americans is any less. I'm going to direct you to a report from the Federation for American Immigration Reform, Fair Immigration. They have dedicated a lot of resources and have a real good team over there of people who have compiled the cost of illegal immigration to the United States taxpayers. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but the cost, this is based on 2020 numbers, by the way. The cost to Americans is $150 billion a year. Now, a lot of us are up in arms over the money that's being sent to Ukraine right now, which is understandable. That is totaling just over $100 billion right now. So this is 1.5 times the money we send to Ukraine, but we're spending on an annualized basis to take care of people who decided to enter our country illegally and from a legal standpoint shouldn't even be here in the first place. It's understandable why Americans are up in arms over this. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I do want to go through some of these numbers and kind of give you a rundown on what is happening and where these things are going, right? Where this funding is going. Now, right off the bat, I know there are going to be some people who say, well, you know what? There are illegal aliens who work, who pay taxes on that money and contribute back to the system. Guess what? These figures already take that into account. So according to Fair Immigration, the total national expenditures are actually at $182 billion and change. The tax contributions that are coming in from those illegal migrants who are working and are part of the system is about $31.3 billion, right? So when we subtract that out, the net burden on U.S. taxpayers is that $150.7 billion that is annualized. So what's the breakdown on that? It's three components. We got federal spending, we got state spending, we also got local spending. At the federal level, we're spending $6.6 billion on education. So that's covering things like primary and secondary education, limited English proficiency, and a big chunk of the education system is people who have difficulty speaking English. And those people we have to provide an education for. There's actually a Supreme Court ruling from 1982 that says that we are required to provide educational resources to illegal aliens and their children. So this is not something we can get out of. This is mandatory spending. This is not discretional spending. Some of that funding is also going to Head Start programs, again, bringing that total to $6.6 billion. We're spending $23.1 billion on federal medical expenditures. So this is uncompensated hospital expenditures, skipping out on the bill. If you need to go to the hospital, if you don't have funds to pay for the services, that money's got to come from somewhere. Medicaid births, Medicaid fraud, that's included. Medicaid for U.S.-born children of illegal aliens is wrapped into that as well. So that's where that $23 billion is coming from. Total federal justice enforcement expenditure, that's $25.1 billion. That includes federal incarceration, enforcement and removal operations, deportations, customs and border protection operations, other ICE operations. The State Criminal Alien Assistance Program, I'm not even sure what that is, to be honest with you. Alien minors, a couple grants, and National Guard deployment and some other things. So that totals about $25.1 billion. Total federal welfare programs for people who, again, have illegally entered the country, top $11.6 billion. That money is going to Meals in Schools programs, the SNAP program, Women, Infants, and Children, temporary assistance for needy families, Child Care and Development Fund, supplemental Social Security income, and also public housing. So that brings us to that $11.5 billion figure. Total overall federal expenditures, as I mentioned, are $66.5 billion per year. This is insanity. On a state level, we're going to see something similar. So state educational expenditures, $73.3 billion a year. That covers K through 12 public school. It covers post-secondary tuition losses, financial aid. That's where that $73.3 billion is coming in. State medical expenditures, $18.6 billion. That includes Medicaid births, uncompensated medical expense, improper medical payouts, Medicaid for children, citizen children of illegal aliens, Medi-Cal expansions, and other state programs. When it comes to justice expenditures at the state level, that's topping $21.8 billion. That includes policing, judicial, corrections, state border, and then it subtracts out funds from the federal government. So that's 21 and change. And then state welfare expenditures are topping $2 billion. So that's the Child Care Development Fund, temporary assistance to needy families and meals in schools at the state level. And then, so that the state and local total expenditure is about $115 billion. This is insane, guys. We spent how much money on Ukraine aid? We're sending $100-something billion now in aid and weapons and supplies to Ukraine to fight a war that no one here in America wants except the warmongers. And we're doing a similar thing in terms of expenditures on an annualized basis for people who decided to hop our border, disrespect our country, and not come in the legal way. I mean, these numbers are set to get a lot worse because we have a government right now that's run by people who support the open borders agenda, the George Soros open borders agenda, which we're seeing around the entire world. It's not just the U.S., right? I mean, just in the in the first 2 years of the Biden administration, more than 6.3 million illegal aliens crossed into the United States. That number during the first 2 years alone was more than all 4 years of the Trump administration combined. At this point, the latest estimates are that we have 7.2 million illegal aliens who've crossed into the United States under the tenure of the Biden administration. The numbers, this $150 billion total that we're talking about as far as expenditures, does not take into account all of the new people who've crossed the border since Biden has taken office. So these numbers are going to skyrocket. I think the estimate is that the net cost is projected to exceed $180 billion after we factor all the people who have come in since January 20th of 2021. I mean, this is all money that we could be using for septic systems, money that we could be using for housing, money that could be going to school safety to better shore up our schools against crazy people who would want to kill kids and engage in mass shootings and those sorts of things. I mean, it's mind-boggling. I don't know how we fix this. I mean, the responsibility for immigration lies with Congress. And I think for anybody who's concerned about this, as we all should be, the onus is on us to start pressuring our congressional representatives to start doing the right thing and craft an immigration policy that makes sense, that puts us in control, that creates a pathway towards citizenship, but does it in a way that doesn't disenfranchise the American people. So I don't know. If you think I missed anything, let me know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Other than that, y'all take care, and I'll catch you on the next one.